Today's episode of Medieval Madness is sponsored by War Thunder. Stay tuned for more info. There are lots of myths about medieval torture, like the sarcophagus lined with spikes. Known as the Iron Maiden, it has appeared in many movies and countless dungeon attractions across the world, but is a complete work of fiction. However, it is true that the Middle Ages saw the invention of some of the most painful and cruel types of torture in history. Torture that was used as a means of religious persecution, criminal punishment, and at times, social control. Let's travel back in time now to uncover the nasty reality of medieval torture and look at some of the methods, devices, and victims who endured this dark and cruel torment in the Middle Ages. Welcome to Medieval Madness. The trouble with normal. According to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle of 1139, during the 12th century civil war between Matilda and Stephen, supporters on both sides, quote, seized those they believed to have any wealth, whether they were men or women, and to get their gold or silver they put them into prison and tortured them with unspeakable tortures, for never were martyrs tortured as they were. They hung them up by the feet and smoked them with foul smoke. They strung them up by the thumbs or by the head and hung coats of mail on their feet. They tied knotted cords around their heads and twisted them until it entered the brain. It was during the 12th century that a revolution in jurisprudence and legal culture took place in Europe and shaped criminal law. It stemmed from an update of early medieval regulations and a need to unite law across Christian Europe. Earlier principles with their trial by ordeal methods were thought to be unsound and primitive. One important change that came along was that the interrogation process replaced the old accusatorial procedure. Now, instead of the freeman's oath coming at the top of the list of evidence for a criminal conviction, confession came first. It was regarded as such solid confirmation that jurists began to call confession the queen of proofs. In a time where fear and cruelty were used as a way to assert power, torture was the perfect tool to get that confession as well as gather information or just as a form of punishment. After all, what better deterrent was there than the horror of being tortured for hours on end at the hands of a sadistic tormentor? Defined as intentionally causing someone to experience pain or suffering, now torture became common practice in the Middle Ages. Countless victims suffered across a variety of venues in medieval dungeons, jails, and Inquisition chambers. Some of the tormentors were skilled in their art, knowing just how far to go to get information without killing their victim. Imagine that John de Oakle was found dead in Oxford High Street on Saturday the 17th of June 1346. But there is only one eyewitness who says that it was Andrew, son of Thomas Legay, who slew John with a knife in the throat. Everything points to Thomas's guilt, but after the interrogation, the accused refuses to confess. So the judge orders torture. Along with the judge, a notary and a physician are present during the procedure, as well as the torturer and his assistants. At first, Thomas is just shown the torture instruments in the hope that he will be so terrified that he'll confess there and then. But what if he's not guilty? Maybe his accuser has a grudge against him and just wants to get revenge. There were some people who believed that anyone being tortured was likely to tell you exactly what you wanted to hear. In his treatise on the praises of the laws of England, Chief Justice under King Henry VI and Edward IV of England, Sir John Fortescue, stated that information obtained under torture, and that included confessions, were worthless as they were obtained, quote, not because of truth, but only because of irresistible torments. He stressed that there would always be doubt if a confession were extracted under torture. Unfortunately, Fortescue was just one concerned voice in an ocean of merciless ones. And anyway, none of that matters to Thomas's torturers as they drag him to the rack. This episode of Medieval Madness is sponsored by War Thunder, the most ridiculously detailed vehicle combat game ever created, and the only place you can go from piloting a biplane in 1932 to launching a guided missile from a modern jet. And yes, it's completely free to play, whether you're on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or your trusty mobile device. Now, while we spent most of our time in the mud and mayhem of the Middle Ages, War Thunder gives you the chance to step into the boots or cockpits of over 2,500 historically inspired vehicles from 10 major nations. Tanks, planes, helicopters, ships, you name it. From the clanking beast of the 1920s to the sleek killing machines of today, it's all here. And the attention to detail is frankly absurd. We're talking realistic physics, authentic sound effects, and vehicles modeled down to the rivets and fuel lines. If your tank gets hit, you won't just explode and respawn. You'll learn what went wrong thanks to the X-ray kill cam that shows you exactly what the enemy hit, how it penetrated your armor, and which poor crew member got the worst of it. It's brutal, it's brilliant, and it makes you weirdly attached to your favorite tank. Plus, there's a whole world of customization to explore. You can deck out your vehicles with all sorts of camo patterns, historical insignia, and community-made decorations. Finally, a game where you can go into battle looking both deadly and fabulous. And if you're the type who likes to wage war on the go, or sneak in a few matches during lunch, War Thunder is now available on iOS and Android too. Same epic battles, now in the palm of your hand. Now here's the best bit, if you sign up using the link in the pinned comment or video description, you'll get a massive bonus pack available for new players or anyone returning after at least 6 months on PC or console. This includes the exclusive Eagle of Valor vehicle decorator, a hefty stash of 100,000 silver lions, and 7 days of premium account time to get your war machine humming. But be warned, it's a limited time offer, so don't wait too long. That Eagle won't stay valorous forever. So whether you're a history buff, a battle-hardened veteran, or just someone who thinks explosions are neat, give War Thunder a try. It's free, it's huge, and it's about as close to commanding real military hardware as you can get without upsetting the Ministry of Defense. Thanks again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video, and now back to the Middle Ages, where the only tactical vehicle was a horse, and the kill cam was just watching someone fall over. Killing in the name of. Two of the most popular sorts of torture were the rack and the strappado, also known as the Queen of Torments. Both involve stretching the human body to breaking point. Sadly, during the Middle Ages, many of the cruelest tortures were inflicted by one sort of Christian on another Christian who believed them to be less Christian than they were. And a lot of these torments relied on the twisting of limbs or the contorting of the body, as the church discouraged the shedding of blood. John Gerard was a 30-year-old Jesuit priest who was arrested in 1594 and tortured during the reign of the Protestant Queen Elizabeth I. After first being sent to the Clink prison in London to join other imprisoned English Catholics, he ended up at the Salt Tower in the Tower of London. There he was further questioned and subjected to the strappado as he was repeatedly suspended from chains by his arms on the dungeon wall. His torturers were trying to get information from him about another priest, but Gerard refused to answer their questions or name any other Jesuits. Gerard survived and later insisted that he had never given in. Father Henry Garnet, leader of the English Jesuits, later said of Gerard, quote, "Twice he has been hung up by the hands with great cruelty on the part of others and no less patience of his own. The examiners say he is exceedingly obstinate and a great friend of either God or of the devil, for they say they cannot extract a word from his lips, save that amidst his torments he speaks the word Jesus. Recently they took him to the rack where the torturers and examiners stood ready for work. But when he entered the place, he at once threw himself on his knees and with a loud voice prayed to God that he would give him strength and courage to be rent to pieces before he might speak a word that would be injurious to any person or to the divine glory. And seeing him so resolved, they did not torture him." Despite the fact that his hands had been mangled from the torture, Gerard was able to escape his torturers and climb out across the tower moat to safety. He escaped to the Catholic country of Spain and later died in Rome at the age of 73. The priest George Beasley was not so lucky, as he came up against Richard Rawcliffe, the torturer who specialised in priest hunting. His repeated brutal sessions left Beasley's body shrunken to that of a skeleton. However, Beasley withstood the agony and could not be provoked into betraying his fellow Catholics. He was hanged, drawn, and quartered. Nicholas Owen also fell victim to the notorious Topcliffe, and he too is famous, but as the principal builder of priest holes rather than the government's chief enforcer. Owen, also a Catholic priest, was taken to the Tower of London and tormented by Topcliffe. His body was dangled from the wall, whilst both of his wrists were held tight with gauntlets attached to a winch. He was a short man and already had a crippled leg from a horse falling on him, and he suffered from a hernia. As he was suspended there, his intestines began to bulge, and when it became obvious that he was not going to reveal any useful information, Topcliffe slashed the distended area, allowing Owen's intestines to spill out, causing his death on March 2nd, 1606. Topcliffe took great pleasure in hunting, arresting, and interrogating many Catholic prisoners. The exiled Catholic sympathizer and writer Richard Rowlands regularly reported on Topcliffe's actions, stating that, quote, "His inhuman cruelty is so great as he will not spare to extend any torture whatsoever. His go-to torture was the strappado, and he was very adept at leaving no visible injury on his victims, although the procedure caused internal damage and even death in some cases." There is also evidence that Topcliffe used psychological torture too, such as sleep deprivation. He liked nothing better than to attend the execution of his victims as a sort of triumphant MC, wallowing in their suffering. Breaking Bad. According to the author Edward Peters, who wrote the book Torture in 1996, almost 600,000 people were tortured between the 11th and 15th centuries, and the array of implements and methods used was both varied and plentiful. From simple whips and chains to the more sophisticated apparatus designed to maim, crush, squeeze, and stretch, such as the iron chair, the wheel, breast ripper, knee splitter, iron boot, and thumbscrews. One of the most common and widely used torture devices was the rack, a wooden frame onto which the victim's wrists and ankles were tied. Rollers at both ends of the rack were turned so that the victim's body was gradually stretched, causing the tearing of muscles and ligaments and the dislocation of the joints. When Anne Askew was tortured and racked in 1545 for heresy, her torturers stretched her body so much that her elbows, knees, shoulders, and hips were all dislocated. She had to be carried to her execution in a chair because she could not walk. Anne was burnt at the stake at Smithfield in London. Although at first the rack was a rudimentary instrument of torture, as time went on, it evolved and more elements were added. Spikes might be placed on the bed of the frame, with braces for the head and feet to increase control. The strappado, or reverse hanging, also caused dislocation and the tearing of muscles and ligaments in the upper body, as the victim's hands were first tied behind their back, and then they were hoisted up into the air by a rope attached to the wrists. Because of the simplicity of the torture, other methods could be used in conjunction with the strappado, such as weights added to the feet for extra pain and pressure. Or the victim could be hoisted high and then suddenly dropped, but stopped just before impact with the ground. That way the body would painfully jolt and could experience the tearing of internal organs or the breaking of bones. It's thought that the Italian preacher Savonarola was tortured by strappado many times before he was hanged and set alight in 1498. It is also believed that Machiavelli was subjected to strappado when he was imprisoned for allegedly conspiring against the Medici family in Florence. Another device that relied on the contortion of a victim's body to inflict maximum pain was the scavenger's daughter, also known as the Skevington's daughter, as it was invented by the Lieutenant of the Tower of London, Sir Leonard Skellington, during the reign of King Henry VIII. This torture device compressed the body rather than stretching it. The machine consisted of a metal A-frame shaped rack. The victim's head was placed in the top, the hands midway, and the feet spread apart at the base. The frame would then fold so that the head would be forced down and the knees forced up into a sitting position. This compressed the body and would often force blood from the ears and nose. When the Knights Templars were arrested by King Philip IV of France in 1307, they were subjected to several forms of torture, including the strappado, thumbscrews, and burning with hot irons. Hot iron torture involved using a heated instrument to burn into the skin. Any metal implement could be used, such as pliers or pincers. Boiling water or molten liquid could also be used by forcing the victim to dip their limbs into them. The torture that went on in medieval Europe is a disturbing and ugly chapter in history. The use of brutal methods and devices was widespread and wielded in the name of religion, justice, and punishment. But it is important to know that, in Europe at least, there has been a gradual evolution in human rights. In many ways, we have learned from the past, and in doing so have tried to create a more humane world. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Medieval Madness. Please do subscribe if you enjoyed this video, as we do release a new one every Friday. So until next time, I hope everyone has an absolutely awesome week. Cheers! Once again, thanks so much to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. You can play it for free right now on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or mobile using the links in the pinned comment or video description. And if you're new to the game or it's been 6 months since you last took to the battlefield, there's a limited time bonus pack waiting for you on PC and consoles, including premium vehicles and a host of in-game rewards. Don't miss out!